Hi, I don't know about you, but I love going to the library. Here are 6 reasons why libraries are awesome. One is that the books and audiobooks are free. Now I know what you might be saying, well, they're paid for in taxes, so they're not technically free, but it's a resource that is there regardless of whether you're using it or not, so you might as well use it. And I feel like I see so much online, people buying so many books, which it's like, of course, if you've read a book and really like it, you should buy it if that's something you want to do. But if you're just trying to get more into reading and listening to books and you're not sure how much you might like or not like a particular book, well, libraries are great because you can just check a book out or an audiobook out. If you get a little bit in and find out it's not something you're really interested in, well, you can return it and you're not out any money and someone else can potentially enjoy it. And even if you read or listen through the whole thing and you find you really did enjoy it, well, that's fine. If you really want it, you can buy it, but you can always just, but if it's something you somewhat liked, but it wasn't like a book you had to have, well, then you can save the money and space not buying it. So libraries allow you to sample a wide variety of books, whether in the physical book format or audiobook format, and see what you're interested in. I know there are other apps I have for books and audiobooks. I've never used them. I'm just a kind of low technology person. If I'm listening to an audiobook, I just rather use CDs. I know there's like Libby and app, so a lot of libraries, or all libraries in the US, I'm not sure, have that too. But in any case, you get free access to a wide variety of books and audiobooks. And even if your local library doesn't have it, usually libraries are part of the library system or your whole state, or I think there's an interlibrary loan where technically you could like order any book that a library in the US has. I mean, it might take weeks or months. I've heard of people doing that. Of course, it might just be easier if that's the case to buy something, and this is US specific, but there are a lot of options when it comes to free access to books with libraries. 2, there are unique, good quality movies and TV shows. I feel like many people are stuck on the hamster wheel of streaming services. Well, you can ditch all that and just get a library card. Libraries also curate their collections of things like movies and TV shows, so they're usually up to a certain quality and have certain very well-known or iconic or important movies. You know, the sort of culturally, historically, artistically significant movies. Libraries tend to have most of those, if either your individual library or other libraries in your library system. With streaming services, a lot of mediocre stuff gets released, and I suppose even before streaming services that was somewhat true of movies. Well, libraries will have some of the newest movies, but they also have a lot of old classics, some of which I don't even know are on streaming services. I've been busy, so I haven't watched that much recently, but in the past I'd sometimes just go to the DVD section of my local library and just look for what looked interesting, or sometimes I'd have a specific movie in mind to see if they had it, but I've sometimes found titles that I'd never heard of before through just looking through the shelves of movies. I like a lot of old movies from the 1930s to 1960s, and of course I like newer ones too. Libraries tend to have a really good selection. I guess if you're someone who wants to watch certain movies or shows that are streaming service exclusive, that's not going to work, but your library or libraries in your library system are probably going to have most of the things you might be interested in watching. Of course, you might have some obscure interests, obscure movies or stuff, but then some of those are more the sort you might get on DVD. Or I've also watched some British miniseries and TV shows for the first time. I feel like libraries tend to have a good selection of those if that's something you're interested in. I feel like there's something to be said for going out to the library and selecting the stuff you're interested in watching in the next week or two or however long, rather than just right before you're going to watch something deciding and then not being sure. It can add a sense of anticipation, oh, I'm going to watch this movie for the first time, and you have a somewhat more limited selection. There's a Drew Gooden video from probably close to 5 years ago called Overwhelmed by Choice, about how streaming services have just so many options that it's hard to choose, or then you watch something and you're not that interested, so then you stop and just, but there's something nice about like a physical space where you can like physically choose something, where it's not just like all sorts of like algorithms or options on a screen, but like physically picking DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever. There's just something nice about that. That nicely segues into 3. Libraries preserve physical media. I don't know about you, but I like physical media. In the age of all the streaming and digital stuff, it's nice to own physical media, but even if you don't personally own it, it's nice to at least use it from a library. Again, libraries tend to have sometimes DVDs or audio books on CD that are maybe harder to get or have more of a limited physical release. There have been so many things in recent years with like streaming services and digital media that I think it's important for people to continue to own physical media. But even if you're not a huge collector of physical media, it's nice to support your local library in the preservation of physical media. It's like there are DVDs and audiobooks that I've seen at the library. They're like 20, 25 years old. So it's like it's important to have the physical media in its original form, or the form that was intended, and libraries can help do that. 4. Libraries preserve history. Many libraries will help preserve local and state history in various ways. And they might have whole collections of old newspapers or magazines. But also, libraries can have some old editions of books or older editions of books. So they preserve history that way. I actually recently came across an edition of a book from a local library that is more than 60 years old. Now the book is more than 90. The book, when it was written, is more than 90 years old. Now the book is more than 90 years old, but that edition more than 60 years old. It's pretty crazy. A book from 1927, an edition from 1960, with a insert from like 1959. It's just pretty cool. Florida alligators almost eat vacationing animals. I know. Even then, what a Florida story. I actually own a newer edition of that same book. I actually have that same book on cassette tapes. I know, I'm so vintage. But it's pretty cool to see different versions of the book and just see history and how books have been printed through the years. And one way you can do that is from books at a library. Again, that doesn't necessarily always happen, but you can sometimes find some really old versions. But you can sometimes find older and unique editions of books at libraries. 5. There are lots of programs, particularly for children, adolescents, and seniors. In my experience, there don't tend to be many library programs for young adults, unfortunately, at least specifically aimed at that age. But libraries do offer lots of programs for learning and socializing. Again, libraries tend to have lots for young children, and then sometimes more for like teens and preteens too. Again, this depends on the library. Probably bigger libraries will have more than smaller ones, but not always. I've seen some local libraries where it seems like smaller libraries have more going on than larger ones, so who knows? It depends on the library, I guess. But most libraries will probably at least have one book club. I mean, some might even have multiple book clubs, particularly larger libraries. And then they have programs for seniors where it's like, don't fall for scams, or how to use like Microsoft Word, how to use different like online programs or stuff. And again, a lot of, I think most, if not all libraries have computers, which again, most people have access. I mean, I feel like if not, they have some sort of computer or at least access to the internet on a phone. But if you don't, you can use a computer there. And they sometimes might have other things, like some libraries might have a movie night or a movie afternoon, either occasionally, or some might have it once or twice a month. Again, sometimes these tend to be aimed at like, more kids, but I've seen some movies that aren't necessarily aimed at kids. So again, some libraries might even do things related to like games or puzzles or like sewing or knitting or stuff like that. Like they might have like special guest speakers come and talk about a certain topic. Again, it varies on the library, and you might not necessarily have stuff for your age or stuff you're interested in, but usually there's something going on, or there might be even like writing clubs or writing groups to help you improve on your writing if you're a writer, and make connections with other local writers, at least, amateur or aspiring writers. And if you're the kind of person who likes to organize things, I'm sure most libraries would be happy to have someone organize an event for them. Again, it depends on what it is, but if you want to organize, like if your library doesn't have a book club and you wanted to organize one, I'm sure they would be happy to facilitate that. Again, I don't know, but I'm saying libraries can be a good social space, which segues into 6, libraries are a third place. I feel like there's been a lot of talk online about like first place, second place, and third place, or places online recently. The first place is supposed to be home, second place is supposed to be work, and third place is a place where that you choose to hang out and relax. It's neither home or work. The thing about third places is that they should either be free or have a very like low price point entry. And I feel like libraries fit that perfectly. And I feel like libraries are maybe one of the few places today in society that exist in most communities that are third places. Right? I mean, I don't know. I guess there somewhat are others, but I guess most communities do have some other sorts of third places, but they tend to be more specific to something, either specific to interests, like community theaters, or specific to beliefs, like churches. But with a library, it's just kind of a basic level that a lot of people can relate to, I guess. Like, that's something in our society, a lot of things that have led to more loneliness and atomization, but it's harder to meet people IRL, like in real life. Now, I haven't necessarily made close friends or really friends as a result of going to the library, but I think it is kind of nice to just have a familiar place where you somewhat know the people, and libraries again are free for admittance. I mean, they're paid for in tax dollars, but if you want to go in, they're free. And even if it's not your library or a library in your system where it might be difficult to check things out, you're still allowed to just go in there and sit. Like some libraries will have cozy little areas, some libraries will have cozy little nooks you can read in, or they might have even special study rooms where you can just go and it's quiet. I feel like there's a trend with the lack of third places, of places that are very much like commercial businesses, where people, particularly teens or preteens and kids, are treating them like a third place because of the lack of third places. Has anyone else noticed that? And I'm not just talking about things like malls or outdoor malls, which are kind of on the edge of a third place. I'm talking about places that very much definitely are not third places. I don't go shopping a lot, but it's something I've noticed every time I've been shopping. Like last summer, I went to buy some eyeshadow brushes from Sephora, and there were these girls there that probably were under 10 years old. I didn't even see any parents with them, so I don't know what the situation was. They weren't being annoying or anything. It was just weird to have kids just that young randomly hanging out at a beauty supply store, whatever you want to call it. They're talking about how much Hello Kitty rocks. It just felt really weird, where it's I don't know, it just felt just surprising. Apparently it's a whole thing, kids at Sephora. I guess I'm not online, and I wasn't online enough about that, but it's it wasn't a problem. It was just not something that I feel like people my age would have done when we were that age. I feel like people around my age, when we were preteens and teens, the level of makeup was a lot more basic than it is today. So I had never even heard that was a thing until recently. So I sometimes feel like I'm overly online and I'm not reading enough. But apparently I wasn't overly online enough to have heard of that before. I was just recently at Target, and I was surprised by how many groups of teenagers were just like hanging out, seemingly hanging out there. I mean, maybe they were shopping, but I don't even know if they were shopping where it's like, I don't know if they're like, hey, it's a Sunday afternoon, let's hang out at Target. It was actually pretty funny. I'm not kidding when I say it's been almost 6 years since I think the last time I was at a Target. I don't know, I just don't shop much. But I was just kind of, looking around in the different sections. I had what I needed to buy, but I was just kind of looking around for fun to see stuff. And then I was in kind of it was like the kids' blanket section. And I saw a sign for someone's products who, let's just say it was a pretty funny time to see that sign in Target because I guess she's turned over a new leaf now. It's like, girl, you were selling blankets at Target. Your sign is still up in the kids' blanket aisle at my local Target. I was a blanket. But there's something to be said for not being afraid to put yourself out there, even if other people might think you look stupid or make fun of you. So, on some level, you gotta respect it. Anyway, this has gotten off track with the Sephora and Target stories. Back to talking about libraries. So in short, libraries are really great, they're really important. Going to a library is something that's a pretty regular highlight for me. It's something I enjoy a lot, and if you haven't, and if it's not something you do, and if it's something that interests you and you have the time and you don't already, I would suggest doing it.